Everyone, enjoy this show now because the internet is going to ruin this show. Recently, a lot of YouTubers have come out and been dragging the conditions of the show. I've seen multiple videos that have said the contestants don't get sleep, they don't get that much food, they don't get water. And then I think one of the contestants from season 2 came out and said the conditions were terrible and should be illegal. And this is why we cannot have nice things. Hi everyone, my name's Dimitri and welcome back to DimitriTube. Love is Blind, the reunion, let's talk about it. As always, if you're enjoying my videos, please go ahead and pound that like button, pound that subscribe button, and ring that notification bell. I'm a growing YouTuber and the likes and subscribes really help me out. For the reunion, I'm just gonna say a few things in general about the reunion. I'm going to talk about the outfits and then we're going to dive into the actual content. First, so if you didn't know, Netflix tried to do the reunion live on Sunday and then they had a technical glitch and then they ended up just showing it on Monday and it was not live. And my question is, why did Netflix try to have it live in the first place? It's not like having it live really adds any value to it. Also, I don't know what made Netflix think they could do it live. If you watch The Real Housewives, they can't even do a live reunion. So what made Netflix think they can do this live? And I don't know if y'all watch The Real Housewives, but to go over an entire season in 90 minutes is pretty crazy. And this is just my opinion. I'm pretty sure Netflix did edit this reunion some, but due to time, they couldn't edit it too much. And this is just my opinion. They could have edited out like 15 more minutes of this because some of the questions were just unnecessary. And at points, Vanessa and some of the contestants were just rambling. Next, Nick and Vanessa Lachey are not good hosts. And making them do it live is putting more on their hosting abilities that I just don't think they were ready for. So far, all of the reunions for this show up to this point have been pretty terrible, and part of that reason is because Nick and Vanessa aren't very good hosts. So to put even more on them to do it live was just not a good choice. Next, this is probably the most important thing to keep in mind for this reunion. This season was filmed in like April, May 2022, and now they filmed this in April 2023. So this is a year later. Keep that in mind. The experiment, all these weddings, moving in together, all of this happened like a year ago. So given that, Marshall has probably moved on. Micah has probably moved on. Zack was mad at Irina, but he's probably over it now because he's been married to Bliss for like a year now. The drama that happened in the pods, that happened like a year ago. So the contestants may still be mad, but at the same time, they probably don't care at this point. Next, somebody started a petition on change.org to have the Lacheys fired from hosting. And I thought this was so funny. At the time I tracked, it had like 32,000 signatures. And this is just what I think. Vanessa should just be fired. Like if we could just fire Vanessa and only have Nick, I think it'd be perfect. I do think Nick does a good job hosting. It's just Vanessa does too much. But because they're married, I think it's like an all or nothing type of thing. You're either gonna have both of us or you're gonna have none of us. But I truly think if it was just Nick, it would be a lot better. Nick gives the contestants an opportunity to talk. He gives them an opportunity to tell his stories. And some of his questions are messy, but he asks it in a way that is sensitive to the contestants, whereas Vanessa doesn't know how to do all that. We're going to talk about this a little more, but Vanessa in general just does too much. Like, look at her outfit. This is so extra. Next, this reunion was so tough to watch. It took me like 4 days to get through it because it was just so heavy. When it comes to Netflix, so I don't have commercials, but there were not many lighthearted moments, and Nick and Vanessa's jokes were just not landing. So it was just very heavy and it was just tough to watch. Like in general, there just wasn't enough to break up the drama and heavy moments. And I commend Nick and Vanessa for trying. Like they really tried to give some jokes, but like 90% of them were just not landing. Like Nick and Vanessa are not comedians. And the last thing I want to say, everyone enjoy this show now because the internet is going to ruin this show. Recently, a lot of YouTubers have come out and been dragging the conditions of the show. I've seen multiple videos that have said the contestants don't get sleep, they don't get that much food, they don't get water. And then I think one of the contestants from season 2 came out and said the conditions were terrible and should be illegal. And this is why we cannot have nice things. So don't get me wrong, the contestants should not be under inhumane conditions, but at the same time, this shouldn't be a walk in the ballpark. But a lot of people online are saying this is psychological abuse. There needs to be a psychologist on set. They need to give them more stable conditions, etc., etc. But the problem with that is we don't want a cast of all healthy and stable relationships. If that happened, the show would be boring. If we had a show of all Tiffany and Brett couples, you would be bored and there would be no show. And a lot of people are pushing for like psychologists on set and all this other nonsense. But the problem with that is you don't want a ton of perfect people casted on this show. Like, it's okay if their mental health is not perfect, because you don't want to watch a ton of perfect people on TV. It's gonna be boring. You want to see people make mistakes and learn from their mistakes. Like, that's what makes the show good. And right now, I think they're filming season 5, so season 5 should be okay. But y'all, I'm truly concerned about the demise of the show. I think the internet may just ruin it. Okay, that's all I got. Let's dive into the actual reunion. And first I want to talk about the outfits. And Vanessa's dress looked cheap. So Vanessa Lachey wanted to be extra with this shoulder piece, but I'm pretty sure this set had very bright lighting, and that bright lighting just kind of made the piece look cheap. And honestly, I would not be surprised if Vanessa thought she was serving on stage, but she really wasn't. And then later on, she has an interview with Jackie and Josh, and I liked her outfit better then. Her outfit was cute, the shoes were cute, her hair looked better, and her titties look good too. She should have worn that for the reunion. Now, the reason she probably wore that for the interview and not the reunion was because the outfit was a little chill. For the reunion, I do think you should probably wear something more over the top. Next, I guess no one gave Paul the memo that you're supposed to dress up for this. Paul literally looked like he was about to go grab some tacos with a couple of his friends for lunch. And then when it comes to Brett and Tiffany, I thought they looked a mess. Their outfits just were not cute. And it also looked like Tiffany got a little bit thicker since the show ended. Hey, thick. I guess Brett likes a little extra and has been making sure Tiffany has been eating. And if you know, you know. Micah came correct. I thought her dress and her hair looked amazing. I didn't like her earrings though. Her earrings look like jumbo paper clips. And then I thought Irina looked amazing. She went darker with the hair and then she paired it with some dark eyeshadow. This looked really good. And I thought her dress was cute too. Not like the best look on the reunion, but I did think her dress was cute. Irina really wants that redemption edit. So for this reunion, she had to dig deep, and I think she did a good job outfit-wise. Because let's be real, y'all, this is her audition for other Netflix reality dating shows, and after this season, she kind of ruined her reputation, so I don't know if she'll have a job after this, so she may have to go back to being on more Netflix reality dating shows. And last but not least, we have Kwame and Chelsea, and I thought they looked amazing. Kwame finally cleaned up that fade, and I thought Chelsea looked really good. Kwame and Chelsea, out of all the couples, had that post-marriage honeymoon phase glow. Like they just looked so happy, and then 1 year out of the marriage, they just seemed like they were glowing. So I honestly thought they looked the best. The only read I do have is that Kwame's pants were on the shorter end and he did not wear socks, and he paired them specifically with loafers. It was giving elf. But unless you were paying super close attention, you probably didn't catch that. And sorry, one more thing. Bliss got some false lashes for the reunion and they looked really good. Like her eyelashes looked amazing. Okay, first let's talk about Tiffany and Brett, and this will be very short. So during the reunion, I learned that Brett lives in Portland and Tiffany lived in Seattle. I didn't know that until the reunion. Next, Brett got a bigger shoe wall for his apartment, and I think the shoe wall is ugly. It's functional, but it's ugly. And last thing about Tiffany and Brett, they need to figure out a way to do breaks on these reunions. Like, they should have found a way for Nick and Vanessa to pull Tiffany and Brett for a short 4-minute interview and then let them go to the audience for the rest of it, because they're really unnecessary. And especially for this season, there were a lot of people on the couches. So at times when Nick and Vanessa were interviewing someone, they were so far away. Like when Nick and Vanessa were interviewing Paul, like he was so far away from them. So they really need to figure out a way to add breaks to this so they can bring the contestants closer to Nick and Vanessa. And a way to do that is to just give the happy couples a short interview. And if you need to bring in some of the other contestants for that, you can just give them a mic or something. Like, there's a way to figure this out. But to have all of them on couches like this the entire time, it's very unnecessary. And this goes the same for Zack and Bliss. Nick and Vanessa could have pulled Zack and Bliss for a one-on-one interview and then pulled in Irina for questions when necessary. They didn't need to have Zack and Bliss on the couch the entire time. So first thing I want to say about Zack and Bliss. So during their wedding, they played a specific song for like their first dance or something. It's a very famous song. I forgot what it is. I don't know it. But I bet Netflix was so mad that they had to pay for the rights for that song. And we also find out that Bliss's dad is now supportive of the wedding. And he was so supportive, he paid for their honeymoon. So Nick and Vanessa bring out Irina. Irina apologizes to Zack. She said she was having main character syndrome and she was being selfish in the pods. And I thought this was kind of surprising because I thought Micah had way more main character syndrome than Irina did. And at one point, Vanessa asked Zack if he thought that Irina took the relationship seriously, and Zack was just like, no. And I agreed. And that's one of the problems with Vanessa's hosting. She asks some of the most obvious questions. And then after that, Zack accuses Irina of going on the show for fame. And then when he does that, you hear the audience in the background like, oh. And I don't know how I feel about the audience. Netflix just needs to work on their structure because it is weird that they don't have breaks, but also I don't know if the audience is really working. I'm pretty sure this is the first time they've had an audience for a Love is Blind reunion. And I think it's just not working because this reunion specifically was so heavy. If there were more lighthearted moments, I think the audience would work. But because the whole reunion was super heavy, it's just not really working. And then Irina responds back to Zack and says that the reason she was not feeling him was not because of looks. It was because when they met, they just didn't have a connection. And I honestly agree with that because I think when they were in Mexico, she said like on paper, her type usually is dark hair, dark eyes. And she also liked Paul, who fit those characteristics. So I don't think it was looks. I do think it was just when she met Zack, the connection just wasn't there. And it's very clear when Irina met Zack, she just got the ick. It was just this weird feeling she had about him and you knew the relationship wasn't going to work. But Irina honestly should have just said, I didn't feel a connection with him, and she should have just left it with that. It may have been Vanessa was digging, but Irina explained more, and she almost painted Zack like he was a creeper. She almost painted him like he was going to assault her at any moment. And the way she was talking about Zack, it almost made him look bad, and I think she just should have said, I just didn't feel a connection, period. Next, Irina said production encouraged her to go to Mexico and have a conversation with Zack, and I do believe that. One, why would you turn down a free vacation to Mexico? I wouldn't. And two, it's much tougher to break up with someone in person. So I do understand Irina was kind of loafing a bit in terms of breaking up with Zack. So I give her a little bit of a pass for this. Next, when they were in Mexico or when they got back home to Seattle or something, Irina texted Bliss and said that she dodged a bullet. And Irina does apologize for doing this, and she partly blames her mental health for her actions. And Bliss claps back and says, yeah, I understand mental health is a struggle and you need to work on that, but also you need to take responsibility for your actions. And I do want to unpack this. First, Jackie said the same thing. Jackie, when they were in Mexico, said that Bliss dodged a bullet. If I can find the clip, I'll post it.
Irina hates her man. I know it. I feel like he's like on a different planet. You know, Bliss dodged a bullet. I feel that too. Yeah.
And I think it's kind of not fair that Irina is getting grilled for saying that Bliss dodged a bullet, but Jackie said the same thing and she didn't get grilled for it. Also, Chelsea said something similar as well. Chelsea said something along the lines of, Zack is so weird, keep that man away from me. So I don't understand why only Irina is getting grilled for saying that when a couple of the other women felt the same way. Next, Irina partly blamed her mental health for her actions. So in 2017, there was a big push to like work on your mental health. Oh, work on your mental health, go see a therapist, yada, yada, yada. And don't get me wrong, I am not against therapy. If you need therapy, go. But I will say a lot of people use mental health as like a cop-out excuse for their actions. And Bliss is honestly getting to something much deeper here. Instead of people taking responsibility for their actions, they're just blaming their mental health. And I agree with Bliss. More people need to take responsibility for their actions. And just in general, instead of Irina blaming her mental health, I would have rather have just her said she made poor decisions, but she's learning from those decisions she made. Next, during Paul and Micah's interview, at one point, Zack whispered something into Paul's ear. And then Vanessa specifically calls out Zack and asks him, what did you whisper in Paul's ear? And I guess Zack covered his mic during that moment. And just in general, the way Vanessa asked this was immature as f. And when Vanessa did that, I was kind of just like, who cares? Like, this is already running long. And just in general, as a host, sometimes you just got to let things slide. And then apparently, I think this is what happened. One of the women told Zack that Micah didn't really care about the wedding. So then after that, Vanessa goes down the line of women to try to figure out who told him that. Again, Vanessa is just not a good host, and this moment was just super immature. And not only that, Vanessa does this on this reunion, but why didn't she do this on season 3? So this is a slight sidebar if you watch season 3. So on season 3, Zanab accused her fiance Cole of leaving the bachelor party to hook up with another woman. Keep in mind, none of the women were at the bachelor party. But apparently, one of the women told this to Zanab because she got the information, I guess, from like the husband or some other source or something. So none of the women were there. Matt was not there because I think he just didn't go. And then Brennan got too drunk. So by process of elimination, it would have been really easy to find out where Zanab got this information, but Vanessa didn't do it in that moment. And in general, oftentimes Vanessa just sticks up for the women too hard. And in season 3, it was just very clear that Zanab was lying, but for some reason, Vanessa likes to stick up for the women, but it doesn't make sense why. And finally, towards the end of the reunion, Zack was singing again, and they had a close-up of Irina when Zack was singing, and y'all, I almost died during that part. Irina's face was so funny. Like, this girl was cringing so hard at his singing. Next, let's talk about Kwame and Chelsea, and this is going to be short. Netflix showed some unseen footage between Chelsea and Micah talking about the situation that happened in Mexico. When Micah and Chelsea were talking, they were already back in Seattle from the Mexico trip, and basically Chelsea didn't let the comments bother her, but Micah did apologize for making a poor joke. So in general, by the time Chelsea got back to Seattle, she was very much like, whatever, like let bygones be bygones. And I'm pretty sure she accepted the apology. And now that we're looking at this a year later, Chelsea really does not give a fuck. And at the end of the day, she's the one who got the man anyway, and she's happily married to him, and she's been married to him for a year. This is in general one of the problems with having a reunion a year later. Like, the people have moved on from the drama, and it's like not really a big deal at this point. And then Vanessa asked Chelsea like how she felt about Kwame's reaction to Micah's breakup in the pods. And Kwame gives us a really good answer. He says that the breakup was more mutual than what we saw on TV. And I thought that was a really good answer. And Kwame also says he needed to process through the rough breakup to help move on. And again, that was a really good answer. Because the one thing about being in these pods is, yes, you have someone else that you're falling in love with, but when someone else breaks up with you, that hurt that you felt from that breakup does not immediately go away. And then Vanessa was really trying to pull a reaction out of Chelsea, but it wasn't working because, again, this is like a year after the fact. Chelsea has been married to Kwame for a year. She's happily married. Why would she be upset over something that happened in the pods? Also, this is another thing I would say about the pods. If you ever go on this show, I would not watch it back, or at least I wouldn't watch back the time in the pods, because if you go on this show and you fall in love with someone and things work out, I would not want to risk ruining that fairy tale fantasy that happened in my head. If you watch this back, you risk ruining the fairy tale fantasy you had with your partner in the pods. And this same thing thing happened with Irina in season 2. And last thing about Kwame and Chelsea, they showed us their apartment towards the end, and their apartment is insane. Their apartment was gorgeous and it was absolutely beautiful. If you had an apartment like that in Washington, D.C., it would cost a lot of money. But the only thing is, here in D.C., we don't have views like that. They have like restrictions on how tall the buildings can be. It can't be like taller than the Capitol. So you really don't get views like this. I actually kind of wish I lived in a city where you could get cool views like this, because their view was stunning. And sorry, one more thing about Kwame and Chelsea, and actually this goes for Tiffany and Brett and Zack and Bliss too. Vanessa is really pushing for a Love is Blind baby. Like, I don't know why, but they're really pushing for one of the couples to have a baby from whatever season. And like, Vanessa, do you not understand? You have created monsters. These people are way too busy being famous from the show. They don't have time for a child right now. Let them enjoy their 5 minutes of fame, and when that's over, they'll consider having a kid. Next, let's talk about Paul and Micah. So Paul and Micah was the toughest part of the reunion for me to watch. This is the part I just started and stopped multiple times because it was clear that Vanessa was taking Micah's side, and I don't even know why. Nick and Vanessa really should be unbiased, but it was clear Vanessa was on Micah's side. And not only that, there was a huge miss during the Paul and Micah part. Vanessa and Nick never asked Paul how he felt watching the show back and seeing Micah's poor behavior in the pods. Like, that was a huge question they should have asked. So Vanessa asked Micah, if Paul said yes, would you be married today? And in general, Vanessa worded this question kind of weird, but Micah pulls out all the dramatics. She puts her head down, she looks sad, she takes a moment to answer, she pulls out all these dramatics. And the answer is no. Like, I don't know if Vanessa watched A Different Wedding, but Micah had an opportunity to answer the question first, and she let Paul answer first. And not only that, after Paul answered no, she said she had a feeling he was gonna say no. So since the ordained minister asked Micah, do you say I do first? And then Micah turned the question on Paul, Micah very much loses her agency in this question from Vanessa. And I don't understand why Vanessa even asked her this question. Like, if Micah had originally answered the question yes or no to Paul in the first place, she would have had more agency. But she didn't. She had an opportunity to say I do or no, and she flipped the question back to Paul. And on Vanessa's part, that was just a dumb question because Micah could have went either way with her answer. So of course, Micah is going to pull out all the dramatics and answer the question in a way that she can play victim most. I hope that makes sense. Next, there was a moment in the show where Paul is exiting a room and he's pushing his way past one of the bridesmaids, and he lightly taps one of the bridesmaids because I guess he didn't want to get in her way. And Vanessa brings this up and says the internet brought it up and said it was savage. So in case you didn't know, on the internet right now, there's this huge push to pit men against women. Again, the internet just loves controversy, and especially right now, I don't know why this is being fueled, but the internet is really trying to pit men and women against each other. And they really could have just cut this part out. It was just so unnecessary. I don't know why this show is almost trying to make all men seem like predators. Like, Paul was clearly just trying to move past her without bumping into her. But now they're painting it like he's some sort of predator. And they almost did the same thing with Zack. When Irina was explaining how she just was not comfortable with Zack, Irina was almost painting him like a predator. And to me, this kind of fuels this online sentiment of pitting men against women. Next, we're going to talk about the nurturing aspect. So I looked in my notes. So after the wedding, Paul had a confessional and he said, where is it? I struggled to envision Micah as a mother. The nurturing aspect was missing. That is what Paul said. So Vanessa is grilling Paul and she says, what made you say, I don't see you as the mother of my children? First, Vanessa, that is not what Paul said. He never said, I don't see you as the mother of my children. That is not what Paul said. Paul said, I struggled to envision Micah as a mother. Now let's unpack this. There's a few things I want to say about this. First, not every couple needs to have kids. And later on, we find out that apparently off camera, Micah told him multiple times she wanted to have kids, and Paul was unsure about whether or not he wanted to have kids. And this is important because Paul can still love Micah and think they're good together. He may just not want to have kids together. There are couples that don't have kids. But as we find out later in the reunion, Micah really wants to have kids. So that leads me to think that Paul and Micah maybe just weren't a good match. Next, this is just what one man thinks. Paul is struggling to envision Micah as the mother of his kids. This is just what one man thinks. Just because Paul thinks she may not be the best mother doesn't mean that all men are going to think that. Again, Paul and Micah just may not be a good match. But during this moment, Vanessa was basically painting Paul as the villain because he was struggling to see Micah as a mother. And again, this moment was really tough for me to watch because Vanessa was very biased. She was taking Micah's side on this. Instead of just saying maybe Micah and Paul weren't a good match, she was basically painting Paul as the villain because he didn't think Micah would be a good mother. And that's not right. Next, all of this conversation between Paul and Micah on having kids happened off camera. We as an audience didn't see it. And Vanessa is really digging into these off camera moments. And I'm like, Vanessa, can we stick to what we saw on camera? Like, now it's becoming a he said versus she said type of argument. And we don't know where the truth is. And I'm just like, Vanessa, did you see what happened off camera? Because us as an audience, we did not. And again, this is why Vanessa sucks at hosting. She really needs to focus on what we as an audience saw on camera, because now it's becoming a he said versus she said type of thing. And Vanessa is very biased. So she's going to take Micah's side, whereas we as an audience are sitting here wondering, why is she taking Micah's side? Next, Vanessa really was grilling Paul entirely too hard. She asked him, what would make you see someone as the mother for your kids? Like, what? This is very much a feeling question. Paul just does not have a good feeling with Micah when it comes to having kids. And you can't really explain a feeling like that. It's just like how Irina was explaining the bad feeling she had with Zack. You can't really explain these feelings. And Vanessa just keeps digging into this. It's annoying. It's like, Vanessa, you need to move on. In general, during this moment, Vanessa was doing entirely too much. Next, from what we saw in the pods, Micah's behavior was very childish. And if you looked at Micah's behavior in the pods, a lot of people would think maybe she's not very suited to be a mother. But for some reason, Vanessa is not examining Micah's behavior in the pods. And again, this goes back to the question I had earlier. Vanessa and Nick really should have asked Paul what he thought of Micah's behavior in the pods. Because I could totally see Paul saying, oh, after seeing Micah's behavior in the pods, I didn't think she would be a good mother, because in the pods, Micah was very childish and very selfish. And Vanessa is very much getting on Paul because him saying he struggled to see her as a mother, those words were very hurtful to Micah. And Micah is hurt, and Vanessa sees that Micah is hurt. But at the same time, does Micah's feelings supersede her poor behavior from the pods? At the end of the day, this is a nature versus nurture argument. When it comes to a potential mother being able to nurture her children, is that something that comes innately, or is it something that can be learned? We don't know. And Paul even says, I'm not sure what he says exactly, but he says, maybe I was not the right man to bring that nurturing aspect out of her, which could be true. But again, it's a nature versus nurture argument. We don't know. And Micah was upset that Paul did not tell her specifically that he didn't think she would be a nurturing mother. Micah was upset about that. And Vanessa agreed with Micah that Paul should have told her that he didn't think she would be a nurturing mother. Now, this is just my opinion. I disagree with both Micah and Vanessa. Telling a woman she wouldn't be a good mother, I don't think that is something you should tell someone. I think that is very hurtful. And again, it's a nature versus nurture argument. It's like, yeah, maybe now he doesn't see Micah as nurturing, but can she change? We don't know. And in general, a lot of women want to be moms. So for a guy to tell a woman you're not nurturing to be a mom, that's almost like a slap in the face. So I stand by Paul. I don't think that's something you should tell a woman. And even if Paul did tell that to Micah, is that something you can truly change? I don't know. And let me know if this comparison is like off base, but I feel like telling a woman who wants to have kids she's not nurturing is the same as telling a guy he's got a small dick. Like telling a guy he has a small You're basically like questioning and making fun of his masculinity and telling a woman she's not nurturing enough. It's like, it's almost like you're questioning her femininity, and it's just something you just don't do. In general, Vanessa handled this very poorly. I think she should have just framed it as maybe you two just aren't a good match for one another. And last thing about Paul and Micah, it was mentioned that Paul and Micah dated briefly after the show ended, but the relationship ended quickly. So this is my opinion. They should have never tried to have made that relationship work. You cannot go from being fiancés back to being boyfriend or girlfriend, and you can't go from about to be getting married back to being boyfriend and girlfriend. It's just like a huge step backwards, and I'm not surprised it didn't work. And finally, let's talk about Josh and Jackie. So they had a one-on-one Zoom interview with Vanessa. According to the blogs, I don't know if this is true, Jackie couldn't make it due to mental health reasons. And I don't know what the contracts for this show are looking like. I thought based on the contract, she had to show at the reunion. I guess just like Irina, she used mental health as a cop-out and was able to get out of it. And during this moment, we got to see some unseen footage of Jackie and Josh from the pods. And I still do not understand why Jackie chose Marshall over Josh. It still doesn't make sense to me, but at least we got a little bit of footage of Jackie and Josh in the pods, because at the beginning of the season we got nothing. Now overall, this interview very much sucked, but we learned a few things. Jackie and Josh are still together. Jackie kept the ring. And Jackie claimed that she broke up with Marshall before having coffee with Josh. But in general, of course she was going to deny that. Like, who wouldn't deny that? And at some point, Marshall called Jackie a derogatory name. Also, at one point, Vanessa asked if a baby JJ was on the way. And I will admit, that's very cute. If Jackie and Josh did have a baby and they named him JJ, that would be so adorable. So they give Marshall a chance to clap back at all of these things that Jackie said in the interview. And the first thing Marshall says is that he doesn't think the timeline of when things happened mattered. Like the timeline of when Jackie broke up with him, that doesn't matter. And I agree. I said that on my previous review. The timeline doesn't matter. Regardless, Jackie still looks terrible. Next, Marshall said he felt gypped from the experiment because he didn't get to go all the way to the altar with Jackie and make the decision there. That was surprising to me because me personally, I would rather break up with someone before the wedding. I'd rather the relationship not get that far and we break up sooner. But apparently Marshall wanted to go to the altar and have the decision be there, which I think that's kind of weird. Next, for the derogatory term comment, apparently Jackie called Marshall sweet, and then Marshall clapped back and said Jackie had a strong jawline, and the joke got taken out of context. The whole time he was explaining this, both him and Vanessa were tiptoeing, and they said you can go look at the text messages and decide for yourself. I'm not going to look at these text messages, but I'm pretty sure Jackie called Marshall a Jackie was probably like,
I told you to be more aggressive, not make me some fruity pancakes, you
and then Marshall probably clapped back.
I mean, those strong jaws of yours seem to really be enjoying them pancakes. What's up?
I'm pretty sure emotions were running high and they both called each other out of their names. Next, Marshall said he wanted the ring back because it was a symbol of their love. Again, I don't know who should keep the ring. I talked about this on a previous video, but I don't know who paid for the ring. Like, I don't know if Marshall paid for the ring or if Netflix paid for it. And then on top of that, we don't know how much the ring costs. So this is definitely up for debate. And I said this on a previous video. Out of principle, I think Jackie should give the ring back. They were only engaged for like 2 weeks. But then at the same time, if Netflix paid for the ring, it's kind of like who really has rights to the ring? So this is very much up for debate. And Vanessa does not clear up who paid for the ring at all. And then during this moment, Vanessa had a really embarrassing moment.
Because Jackie posted something. I'm putting it together now, okay?
Like Vanessa getting more riled up than the contestants. It's so embarrassing. And last thing I want to say about Jackie, by Jackie not being at this reunion, it made her look so guilty, and I'm definitely more so on Marshall's side for everything. The only reason I could see someone not going to a reunion that is legitimate is if they're worried about their safety. There was a season of Basketball Wives where this one wife named Drea had beef with all the other contestants, and she didn't go to the reunion due to her safety. week. And it was a smart choice because the other wives were pulling out all these dramatics. They were all ready to fight. They was throwing chairs. They was really upset she was not there. And I think it was smart of Drea not to attend because it did look like it could have gotten violent if she was. But for Jackie, that's not the case. I think she definitely could have shown up. And last thing to wrap up with Marshall. Marshall gives his final word and he's like, this show is supposed to be about love, not drama. And I rolled my eyes so hard because let's be real, if there was no drama on this show, we wouldn't watch it. Again, if this was just 5 couples like Tiffany and Brett, you would be bored out of your mind and you would not watch this show. Again, Marshall, I'm sorry a lot of the drama happened with you, but you are what elevated the season. So I guess that's kind of a win. And I think that's all I got. I think I got everything I wanted to say out. Thank you all so much for joining me on the journey this season. Hands down, this was the best season of Love is Blind they have had to date. This season was amazing. It deserves an Emmy nomination. It was just so good. And I think season 5, they're either filming it or it's already been filmed. So hopefully they don't change it due to all this backlash, but we will wait and see. Like I said earlier in this video, you don't want to have a ton of perfect and healthy, stable people on reality television. You want people who are gonna make mistakes and learn from those mistakes because that's what makes the show interesting. Perfect people are not interesting to watch on TV. So in the comments, please let me know if there's another show you want me to review. Bachelor does not come back until like June, I think. So I may try to find another show before then. If you have any thoughts on the finale and the reunion, let me know below in the comments. I'm curious what y'all thought. I thought it was a mess, but I'm curious what y'all thought. And I'm also gonna try to come out with more content outside of reviews, so look out for that. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, please go ahead and pound that like button, pound that subscribe button, and ring that notification bell, and I will see you all next time. Have a good one. Bye.